You're listening to the Kristof podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. Hey everyone, welcome to conversation number 32 of the Kristof podcast, where I have conversations with inspirational people. If this is your first time listening or watching on YouTube, I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Today's conversation takes us to the war-torn country of Iraq in the late 80s and early 90s. A story about Lena Heto and her family and how they escaped Iraq into Syria, spent time in a refugee camp, and eventually, after leapfrogging through these countries, made it to Australia, where she's an illustrator and she helps other illustrators and artists, people that tattoo, you name it. She helps showcase their work and really helps them get the bump that they need to finally start selling their stuff and a whole plethora of other stuff. It's an amazing story. I was literally on the edge of my seat the entire time, eyes wide open, and I can't wait to share this story with you. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof podcast. Lena, thank you so much for being here with me today.
You're most welcome.
I'm so excited to speak with you today. As we were joking a little offhandedly, I think it's hilarious. I was asking you, how is the future? You are 15 whole hours ahead of us in Australia, having your morning coffee while it is nighttime where I am here on the East Coast in the United States. And I think it's so amazing that we can have a conversation instantaneously like this via video and audio and be able to talk and share stories. And I'll never get past how incredible that is to me. So I'm very excited for you to be on here today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And the future's looking good.
The future's looking good. Yeah, I told my wife I'd ask about the Powerball tickets for tomorrow. So I wasn't sure if that's something. I didn't know if that's how that works. Is that how that works?
Try. That'd be great.
Yeah, but I found you recently on Instagram. I saw your page and I checked it out. I loved your artwork. You're, of course, an illustrator, an artist. And of course, I liked your artwork so much, but what inspired me is when I was looking at some of your videos that you were sharing, is that you were born and grew up in Syria for about 4 or 5 years before going to Australia. That to me is inspirational. My mother is Hungarian and she came to the United States at a late age. She was about 26, I believe. So it's always inspirational to hear stories of when, parents picked up and they took their children to a new country in hopes, I'm sure, and I'd like to hear you of maybe why they did that, but I'm sure of a different life or maybe a better life or more opportunities, or because I can't imagine. So I'd like to know at first maybe how and why your parents chose to move to Australia.
Well, it's an interesting story, of course. I was actually born in Iraq. So I was born in Iraq in 1987, and in 1990 was the Gulf War between Iraq and Iran.
Sure.
So my mom, who at the time was so young, she was 19, decided that she wanted to leave.
Wow.
She wanted to leave Iraq because the borders were opening at that time. So a lot of people were actually fleeing the country to the nearest borders, which was Syria at the time. So my dad was in the army, so he came home and my mum had already decided that we're leaving. I was 3 years old and she had packed everything, sold a lot of things that they had, and pretty much said, we're leaving.
Yeah.
If you're coming, let's go. She said this to my dad. And if not, I'm taking Lena and we're going. So obviously he wasn't going to let her just leave.
Sure.
And then we actually left the following night. So we escaped on foot. Yeah, on foot. So
unbelievable. Wow.
It's my mom can tell the story obviously a lot better because she remembers it more. But just from her telling me the story, it was obviously a very, very huge risk that they took. And it was just all hearsay. There were rumors that there's soldiers from Syria that were allowing people in, just smuggling them in for the right price, that kind of thing. But if you bumped into a soldier from Iraq, they could, kill you. So we escaped, and it was in the middle of the night. It was through just the desert, and we got chased by dogs, so army dogs, so German Shepherd.
What?
I actually have a Shepherd now. The iron.
How does that work? That's like, I could see that being a terrifying thing burnt into the back of your childhood memory, and now you have embraced it fully. That's crazy. Right? You guys were running across the desert from you said Iran, Iraq.
Iraq towards Syria.
To Syria. Unbelievable.
In the north. Yeah, so in the north. So we're walking on. So it was about 8 hours walking, and pretty much once those dogs came, obviously my parents ran, and my dad was holding me.
Yeah.
And we came to it was like a little campsite,
sure.
And there were soldiers in there, and guards, and one of them came out and he asked us who we were and where we came from. Like, where are we from? Syria? Are we from Iraq? Where are we going? What are we doing? And my mum, she's the bravest person. She actually asked the soldier if he was from Iraq or Syria before she would answer him that question. Because if he was from Syria, that's actually good news. If he was from Iraq, they would have sent us back or, killed us.
No, she was smart to be able to think like that, on your toes in such a situation. Like, I'm already thinking she already had these idea to leave the next night from Iraq to Syria. I mean, that is risky as an understatement. That's incredible. I did not know that about it. That's blowing me away to think. And you guys were walking through the desert, so many risks that I'm probably not even aware of hearing this story right here. Never mind the dogs, but like getting caught from the Iraqi military.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of
that's intense.
Didn't make. Yeah, a lot of families didn't make it. So there were it was very risky, and people were just fleeing at any time. And so we found out that the soldier was from Syria, and he actually he accepted a bribe, I guess. So he accepted the money and got us on a bus the next day, and then they sent us over the border to Syria. And then after that, we thought, okay, we've made it. They actually put us in a refuge camp. So they put us in those UNHCR camps.
Sure.
Tents, like actual tents. So I lived in a tent for 5 or 6 months.
Wow.
In the desert, in the heat, where it's extremely hot during the day, but then it's quite cold at night. With no running water, food was rations. So they'll just give you, a sack of flour, a sack of rice, that kind of thing. No bathroom facilities. Like, you'd have to walk really far away just to get to a bathroom. Get that privacy, yeah. So that was pretty intense to
is unreal.
Have that experience of life in the first 4 or 5 years of your life as well.
Sure. Those are when I know for me personally, those are when I first had a lot of concrete memories forming in my life. A very important part of a childhood. Starts, all parts are very important, of course, but I think with memories forming with we were joking about the dogs and you having a dog now, but being able to endure that and go through that, maybe you didn't, I don't know, maybe you didn't fully grasp, as a 4-year-old child, it may be hard to understand the risk that your mother and your parents were taking, but I think that's incredible. And of course they were doing it for an overwhelming amount of reasons to risk. That is the ultimate. I talk about risk a lot actually on this podcast, in the form of risking things for business, or for doing careers that you love, or for meeting people that you want to meet. But to hear this story of it's hard for me to regurgitate it, because I have such a vivid imagination, and I can see you guys walking through the desert for hours, and your parents carrying you, and then there's dogs out there, and you're talking to guards, and you're staying in this camp for 5 to 6 months. Obviously, the conditions were not good, and you guys did all this in pursuit of a better life, and to me, that is beautiful that they were willing to risk that for you. It's so incredible and inspirational.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is as well, so once we got there and we got to the camp, after that 5 months, my mum just couldn't, she said we can't live there anymore because it's not sustainable, it's not ideal.
Yeah.
But we still had to kind of check back in to say we're still in the country because we were technically in limbo. We couldn't go back to Iraq. We weren't Syrian, so we were just a number. So we moved into one of the small towns, and obviously my parents started working, and then they sent me to school. So I went to school and I learned Arabic. So my first language is Assyrian, so it's a little bit different. And I went to school and learned Arabic. And it was in school that I actually discovered my love for drawing. And this was on one of the videos that I've put on my Instagram, where I went to a math class and my maths teacher would write all the numbers on the board and everything, but then after she's done that, she would start decorating the chalkboard with flowers and sun pictures and frames and all these things. And I was fascinated by that I would copy the same frame on my book. I had the numbers and everything in there, but I'd just copy the little drawings and everything. And I would do it so often that I would come home and I'm trying to do my homework and my parents were questioning why I have flowers and rainbows on my maths book.
Sure.
And they just kind of saw that I was really interested in drawing and art, so they encouraged that. Even though we couldn't really afford it, they would buy me pencils and
awesome.
sketch things. So that's how I fell in love with it. It just sort of came into my life.
That's
and that
really
was
cool.
when I was about maybe 5 years old or 4. And since then, it's always been my thing.
You know so quickly, so early. That's amazing.
Yeah, I just loved it. That's why whenever I see like my friends that have young children, and I see that their kids are really interested in colouring and stuff, I always encourage that because it just happens. It just kind of finds you. So, we were in Syria actually for 5 years because we were applying for a humanitarian visa and we kept getting rejected for multiple reasons. One of them was at one stage they were searching for families with like young men that can go to another country and start working and things. So that was one. So we didn't get in that category. The other one was an educated family. My mother only finished primary school. She never finished she never even got to high school. She never finished high school only because of the situation that they were in, and she was really young. She got married. And then the other category, if you will, was young families. So we applied and we got rejected because they only had me. So my parents decided to have another child. When we couldn't afford anything, they decided to have my sister. So we applied again. And then finally they said to us, you know, you've got a young family now. We want to give you the opportunity to start a new life and all of that. And they said, we accept your application, but do not contact us until we contact you. Imagine.
So how long was that now that you had to wait for that?
We had to wait, so we waited 12 months.
Without knowing whether or not that was going to be accepted, you're thinking we're never going to go, you have no idea what's going on, and you just can't contact that. That's unbelievable.
All those things. And it was, the only thing that really kept us going was just hope. We just were really hopeful. We thought, okay, we've been through all the bad stuff now. Like, surely this is the last part. And just waiting. That felt like such a long time. Like 12 months is a long time, but it felt like a lot longer. Especially when you know, you've got that freedom. You're on the edge of it, but you don't know where you're going and when. So then finally they reached out to us and said, you're going to Australia. I had never heard of Australia ever.
So they just randomly picked Australia for you?
Well, we had a very, very, very distant relative here that sponsored us. But we also had reached out to family, extended family in the States and in the UK as well, because that's the only places we knew. We knew England and America. That's it. We didn't know Australia.
Holy moly.
I didn't even know what Australia was. So, and then we got, our sponsorship came through and everything. So, we came to Australia in December of 1995.
Okay, so this was, you were 8 years old?
I was 7 and I turned 8 10 days after we arrived here. So my 8th
Unbelievable.
birthday was my favorite.
Yeah, right. Unbelievable. And eight is obviously very well old enough to have all these memories of the transition. And I want to touch
Absolutely.
base on back on something real quick before I forget, because as you were talking, I wanted to say when your parents first saw your sketches in your book, your illustrations and your sketches and everything like that, I was thinking, man, they could have been so discouraging. They could have
Mhm.
told you to stop. This is school. We risked
Yeah.
all this. You need to study your math. You need to study your school books and not, go doodle in your books. But instead, they encouraged you, and they couldn't even afford and put you in the position to get all the tools and paperwork, and pencils and crayons and everything that you needed. But instead, they did that for you. And to me,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that is such an amazing thing for a parent to be able to support that. I my wife and I are going to be parents very soon in about 3.5 months, and we have the conversation. Yeah, it's a little girl as well. Speaking of little
Oh,
girls, and we always say,
congratulations.
thank you. That we want to be able to support her no matter what she does, whether no matter what sport she likes to play, if she even likes to play sports. If she's into art, if she's not, you want to support that. So for me, I'm thinking about that because my mind is so engaged on my future daughter, and then I think it's such a great thing to hear that your parents supported you, even though you were kind
Yeah.
of not as much paying attention. Well, not to say that you weren't paying attention to school, you were of course, but you were so much more intrigued. So I love to see the support coming from the parents. I truly do. So I wanted to touch base on that. But then, that was at 4 or 5 years old, like you said. So flash forward to about 4 or 5 more years, or you
Yeah.
said your 8th birthday, so 4 more years until you guys were
Yeah.
it took 4 years in Syria before you came to Australia. And that's a long time. I mean, gosh, you said you waited a year for the
Yeah.
application, but that's just the year before you even submitted the application. Then there's 3 years, 3 whole years before that, and then before that was I'm still stuck on the whole tent thing for 5 or 6 months. I mean, there are so many things that your family had to endure, and then again, just as they couldn't support your tools for illustrations,
Yeah.
they couldn't support another child, but they knew they had to do that. And I think that's
Yeah.
really cool that I mean, cool is obviously not a strong enough word. It's amazing and it's inspirational that they were able to do that. And that's a lot of risk. That's a lot more risk. I mean, ever since you started telling me your story and your family's story, I'm just like, this is filled of risk and just very dangerous things, but you said hope, in great hopes of something so much better. And then you
Yeah.
spent your 8th birthday in Australia, and you guys were able to get there, and your family, and it's just here you are years later. Because I'm an '87 baby as well, so I can relate to that, and I think it's very cool because that's 22 years later, here you are, and you're doing what you love because your parents supported you to get you the
Yes.
tools that you needed, and they risked
Yeah.
everything. They risked everything to get you to a country that was safe where you can continue your education and continue doing what you love. And to me, that is the epitome of this channel of inspirational stories and doing what you love. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So it continues because when I came to Australia, I couldn't speak English.
Oh, yeah,
Just to kind of throw that in the mix. So
sure.
my parents put me in school, obviously, as soon as possible, and I went into the 3rd grade in primary school with no English. So I actually used drawing to communicate with the kids at school
I was
in my
gonna
class.
ask if you used it somehow to communicate. That's amazing.
Yeah, so by
Huh.
then I could already speak 2 languages, and then I was learning English, and I was just using the drawing to communicate with the kids, and I just found it really easy to kind of blend in or be accepted, not blend in because it was very different, but it
Sure.
was more be accepted because of the drawing. So the kids were fascinated by the fact that I could draw. I look back on those drawings; they're not that great, but for a young child to draw
Yeah.
like that, I mean, it's cool. Yeah, so the kids really found that really interesting, and I became friends with a lot of them, and I learned English. And then the following year, our school had a program where they teach Italian. So I started learning Italian. So by the time I was 9,
I was gonna
I could
say.
speak 4 languages.
That's unbelievable. But my mother being Hungarian, like I had mentioned in the beginning, I spoke 2 languages as a child. Now, I could probably not get around Hungary at this point in my life because I haven't spoken it fluently for about, I'd say, 18 years. However, I've heard many times and read that at that early age, when we were talking about those young years being so influential in a child, it's a lot easier for kids to learn all these different languages. I mean, I have plenty of family in Europe still, in Hungary still, and a lot of the kids growing up, they spoke, obviously English, they spoke Hungarian, and there was German. So, but 4, I think, tops the list of what I've heard. That's pretty impressive.
I'm not super fluent in all of them, but the fact that I could speak 4 by the age of 9 was just, it wasn't even a choice. It just happened, kind of thing. Yeah. I just fell into it.
Yeah, that's incredible. Really I don't speak any of the other languages that you speak, but your English is, to me, absolutely perfect, and you definitely have the Australian accent that I've come to recognize. But of course, again, you've been there for 22 years. So.
Yeah, of course. So that's kind of the first. My childhood, so that was like the first part of my life, which is quite significant.
Absolutely.
Obviously, just your standard, day-to-day type of thing. There are a lot of things there that, were very impactful, and they do stay with you for a while. Sure. And some things were very scarring, but sure. I never used that as, a self-pity type of thing. I always think to myself, if I can get through that, I can do anything. Because there's times you get caught up in like the little things. Something's late, or there's a lot of traffic, or really tiny things. But if you look at it from like a grand scale, and I can do it really well because it was my personal story and it was my personal experience. I look at it and I think, okay, I'm stressed out at work, but I survived a war. Yeah. I survived literally a camp, a refugee camp. We lived in poverty. You can't even compare it. So then it just puts everything into perspective again. And I think that's fine. I'm not going to stress about this. I've become a lot more resilient as well because of that. Because I always go back to the start of my life, and I think if I can get through that as a child, I can get through as an adult.
I love that, and I've only recently come to recognize that in my own life, to be able to not be as intimidated by things that I foresee in my future that I'd like to do because I don't think I'm capable of doing them. And then I look back and see, well, just as you've said, I look back and I see that I've done these things, and I know that if I can accomplish these, if I've gotten through these times, then I can very, very much get through what is coming to me in the future. And I think in your exact, you said you can only speak for yourself, but wow, if that's not something to be able to reach back for those about 4 or 5 years of your life, I don't know what is. And it's tough because, yes, they say these problems are quote unquote first world, traffic or stress at work, but they are still real stressors, and it can be tough. But I think, yes, you very much have to put it into perspective that there are so many times that it could be worse, and there are currently people in that situation that have not even an ounce of the opportunity that you and I have right now. I mean, I'm in a house, with heating and AC, and I sleep on a bed, and I don't have to worry about this war-torn area. And more than anybody right now, that is such a such a reality that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to escape from, and they live their lives in that. So I think it is very healthy to be able to, even though everybody's problems are relative to themselves, to be able to also look to other parts of the world, and of course if you have your own life experiences, reach back to those and kind of align yourself and put yourself in perspective. I think that's extremely important to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say to my friends, I know my situation is very unique compared to my friends, but I always say to them the same thing what you were mentioning before, like look back at a time that you went through something like adversity or something really challenging, and you actually worked through that and you got out on the side. Yeah. Look back on and that's how you can put things into perspective. You say, okay, that I thought that was going to be the end of the world. I thought that was the most stressful time.
Usually you do.
And then, because that's you're really in it and you're feeling all the emotions and you're thinking everything, and that's hard to kind of step away from. But once you work through it and you come out the other side, you take learnings from there. You can use that as something like a measuring stick for next time. If you go through something similar or that what you perceive is worse, at least you know that there's always a way out. There's always an option. There's always hope. So my example is very extreme, but everyone's been through different things and everyone's got a story.
Absolutely. It's such an incredible tool to be able to reach back and utilize that. And yeah, like you said, your story is your own, but to be able to look back at your story and see that you and your family endured through that and you got through that to have these opportunities that you have now. I mean, that I've already said it 5 times how inspirational it is, but to be able to reach back and know that you guys got through that and then be able to apply that to your life, like, well, if we could get through that, I know I can get through my day. I know I can get through this traffic or whatever is bugging you for that day. So I definitely encourage anybody that's listening to this or watching to look back in their life. And that's why I think resistance in one person's life is very important. Resistance in one's life is extremely important. I firmly believe, I've said it many times before, I've said it many times, that if someone doesn't face adversity and face resistance, they are less likely to deal with resistance once they get to it. So maybe if you had the current stresses you have in your life now, but you had not experienced what you did as a child and all growing up, then you would be perhaps less likely to handle that stress or deal with that stress or cope with that stress better. So I do think that's very important. And that's, like you said, a very drastic example, of extreme example of it, but it's still a real life example that you truly lived. So that's crazy. And not, of course, everybody has to have such a drastic example, but I think you have to look back and look at some examples, because I know that I make up things in my head much worse than they usually turn out to be. Most of the time, I think that's probably just a human nature, human characteristic, is to imagine it being worse than it really is. And I think maybe sometimes that's a good thing, because, well, it can work inversely as well. Like we're talking, it can work against you that way, but at the same time, once you get past it, then you're able to apply that to the future, as we are already speaking about. So resistance is important, and being able to reach back and then realize that you made it through before, just as important. It's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. It's one of those things that I learned from such a young age, and I still apply it in my life all the time now. So there are times I do forget. I'll be honest. I do get caught up in it.
We all do. It's hard to, and I think when you live the life that you live day in and day out, and especially in your case, that was 22 years ago, and of course you do remember it, but it can be easy to get wrapped up in the day-to-day life. Again, like you said, you can only speak for yourself, and I can only speak for myself, and I get wrapped up in it sometimes, and I'll find myself complaining to myself or to my wife or to my family about something that when I look back on it may seem very, very silly retrospectively, that I was just I couldn't believe I was complaining about it at the time. And then I think back to certain situations. I'll give an example that you don't know this, but many people in the podcast have heard me, that I was in the Navy. I did 9 years in the Navy, and I actually did a few tours in Afghanistan. So similar region, to Iraq and Syria, and I had been over there and seeing some of the families growing up there and where they were living, and the lack of just everything that we had over here in first world countries really started putting things in perspective for me. And I know without a doubt that my time in the military when I was serving abroad shaped who I am today and helped me see how you're seeing the world as well. And I wholeheartedly mean you don't have to have as drastic measures as your story and some of the things that I saw over there. But I just know that simple things that we take for granted, like I said, having a warm home or a cool home in the summer, things that you just take for granted. And we're talking about getting wrapped up in the things that we take for granted. I saw that, and I reach back to that sometimes, and I think about the kids you see running around bare feet, and I don't know, we would throw them candy bars, and they'd be so happy to catch these candy bars when we came by. And I think about how their smiles on their face for that kind of stuff, and that's some of the stories that I will never forget. It was very cool to be able to help them and to bring a smile to their face by a candy bar. I stutter because I think about it. I'm vividly remembering those as well, and I'm just that's just a tiny little example of some of the things that occurred over there. Of course, that's been a war-torn area very much for the past decades at a minimum, So it's tough, but I digress. I'm just saying, I think about those times in my life as well, and it helps you put it in perspective very easily.
I did hear that on one of the podcasts, actually. I think I can't remember which one of yours, and I heard that you were in the military, so I did a bit of research on you.
I appreciate you listening. I never know, and a lot of times I think as the podcast gains momentum, hopefully that there are a lot of first-time listeners, so I absolutely don't mind repeating myself, and I do like sharing about myself as well. I like talking about the guest mostly, but I just I think quite a bit. I'm always listening, and then my mind is always racing and thinking about other things as you're talking. So I'm doing two things at once. So I was thinking about, of course, all the things that I experienced when I was in Afghanistan, in the Middle East there, and there was a lot of similarities. And I by no means was in any type of scenario of your family racing through the desert at night and dogs chasing you. I mean, there were some crazy dogs over there, but nothing like that. So that's something very important that I'll never forget, and I know you'll never forget either. And then, of course, all the traveling you did as a child, and then I know that you still travel very much, and that inspires your work, correct?
Absolutely, 100%. So definitely love travel. I always love trying new things and going new places, and I love immersing in the culture of different places that I go to. So I've traveled a lot on my own as well. So because I think it's maybe because how I've grown up and we've always moved around and things. So I do love Melbourne. Melbourne is my home, but I could also adapt to anywhere.
Yeah. Kind
of thing. It's not snowing. I'm not a huge fan of snow if it's too cold. I'm from the desert. We like hot. So if it's nice and hot or nice and warm, I'm good. But yeah, I've traveled a lot. I actually went on, so there was one trip that really changed my life, actually. So I'd love to tell you about that.
Absolutely. I'm all yours.
And everything just ties in. I love how everything just kind of interweaves. So it was in 2012, I believe. Yes, it was in 2012, and I was working full-time for an engineering company, but I was working in finance, but I have a degree in art. Anyway, I'm very adaptable. So working there, and I thought I want to do more of my artwork, and I want to display my work. And I came across an artist, an illustrator online, and his name is David Cantero, and he's from Spain. And I reached out to him and I just said, I really love your work. I like the style. It's very kind of graphic style. And I wrote to him and I said, what do you think I should do if I want to pursue illustration?
Yeah.
And he responded saying, have an exhibition. So showcase your work and see how people respond. And I thought, okay, I'll try that. So I tried that, and I had 5 pieces up in a small cafe that I was managing as well as working full time. And I sold 3 out of 5 paintings on that night.
That's incredible.
Which I thought, I wasn't planning to. I didn't have price tickets on there. I just made up a price. I reported back to David, and he said he had not sold artwork for like his first 3 exhibitions.
Wow.
So for me to sell something in my first one when I only had 5 pieces was a good sign.
I think so.
And Yeah, it was, yeah, I think it was great. He probably wanted to know my secrets.
Yeah,
on how.
right.
So, so then after that, I thought I want to do a bit more in the time that I was working. So I was working 5 days a week, and then the sixth day I was managing a cafe. I thought, okay, how else can I squeeze in some more art? So during my lunch breaks, I was offering free Photoshop lessons. So I'd take my laptop on my lunch break and like engage with people and do Photoshop lessons. And I met this woman who was a photographer. She was a bit older. She was a photographer and did very traditional photography, as in still developing film and everything.
Okay.
And she wanted to move into the digital age.
Yeah, it sounds like my
and
mom.
She wanted someone to teach her. Yeah, like proper
Yeah.
into now. And she wanted someone to teach her how to use Photoshop to correct the color of the images and such. So we met up on my lunch break, and I took her through, and halfway through my presentation, she said, "This is too complicated. I'll just pay you. Can you do it for me?"
Holy shit.
So I said, "Hey, sure, I'll do it." And then I started photoshopping her pictures, and she would photograph a lot of concerts and jazz festivals and that kind of vibe. So it was really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So she would send hundreds of photos weekly for me to
Ooh.
Photoshop. So my workload just
Through the
maxed
roof.
out. And then we became really good friends. And then one day, it was just so interesting how the conversation came about. But we spoke about Spain, and I spoke about David, and I spoke about travel and everything. And she said to me, I've got a house in Spain. I've got a villa in Spain, because she used to live there a few years prior. And her husband's from the UK, so they've got a house there, but they live in Australia now. And she said, I just rent it out. It's like a holiday rental. I said, that's cool. That's really nice. And then she said to me, actually, I wouldn't mind sending you there just to see how everything's going from like a maintenance perspective, because she's got a housekeeper, but she wanted someone to kind of check it out.
A different perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, yes, okay, that's fine. I'll do that.
Don't mind if I do.
And yeah, and as soon as I told David, I said, David, I'm coming to Spain, blah, blah, blah. And he said, where is the house? And I said, it's in this little town called Sitges, which is 30 minutes south of Barcelona. It's a beach town. It's beautiful, really, really nice. And he said, that's 10 minutes from my house.
Wow.
10 minutes away from his house. So I thought, oh my gosh, okay. So I got goosebumps straight away, because, I mean, what are the chances of that? What are the odds? So I looked at the map. I was just on Google, and I was looking at the map, and it literally was one train stop from his house. And then I look back, and I'm like, I'm all the way in Australia. And I met this woman, like, just through an ad that I put on online. And then she has a house in Spain.
Right next to him.
And then I had David, and it was just trying to process that in my head.
So crazy how things come together like that. It absolutely blows me away, and I think it goes to show, and some people may argue it's just absolute chance, but I think it's crazy that you put yourself out there and you put this ad out there to help people, and that's a huge thing that I like about this podcast. And you went out there, you wanted to help people, teach people, and you taught her, and then you had this relationship with her, and you became friends, and then she offered this for you and said, hey, go there, and then it's right 10 minutes from your mentor. Like, get out of here. Like that, like you said, the odds are, the chances of that happening are incredible. That's cool. Wow.
I love that story, because for me, it kind of goes back to obviously my childhood. Like, sometimes I think, it is going a bit deep now, but sometimes I think, like, why was I chosen to live that life and survive that? Like, why me?
Other people didn't. You're absolutely right. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Let's go do that. Let's go that deep. Absolutely. There's many people that don't make that trip, that don't get the opportunities that we have, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And I'd love to hear your opinion, but I'm sure you think, why us? How did we get through? Yeah,
and I do think that, and I think it just drives me more to find what my purpose is, because I know there's a purpose, and I know there's a reason, because otherwise I would just have lived a normal life and just, grow up and just do all the average things, the normal things that a child would do, which is amazing, by the way, because that's what I'd want for my child in the future. But like, why was I chosen to live that experience and go through all of that, and how things are just falling into place in my life. And the story about Spain, that's just one example. There's just so many more.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in coincidence. I don't think that's a thing. I just think everything's as it should be, and you're always in the right place at the right time. It's just what you make from that experience. So if you think you're in a part of your life that's so dark and negative, what's the lesson in that? Like, do you want to continue that, or do you want to get out of it and become a stronger person?
Absolutely.
So that's how I see everything in my life.
100%.
And
I could not agree more.
It's hard to explain it to people who probably don't think like that, or don't see that perspective. But
a lot of it's experience based, though, right? I mean, your experiences directly are shaping that mindset, because you think about, like you said, going deep, and it is deep. And that's a very emotional thought to think about, why me, when you think about all of the treacherous things that have happened, where people literally do not make it out. They equally, just as your parents wanted a better life, they wanted a better life too, and those people did not make it through. So you feel, I mean, I'm not going to speak for you by any means, but I would think, I mean, you said it, why me? And you definitely want to make sure you make the best of your time here, and be able to contribute and help others, and that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing, and you're. But I'd like to hear the rest about your story as well too. I mean, you're teaching these people. You meet her. You go to Spain now, right?
Yeah. So I'm in Spain, and I meet David for the first time, and we just get along so well, and he spends a lot of time mentoring me and teaching me about illustration and about, form and techniques and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I did art throughout school and throughout high school as well, and for university as well, because I did a Bachelor of Arts degree. But what he taught me was so different, because he always says he's like a big child. So for him, he says creativity it's not just drawing and stuff, it's actually creating another world, and it's imagination, and it's freedom. And that's what I see it as, freedom, because that's something that we have always pursued from when I was first born, is that freedom, which is why I love expressing myself through my art. And I did go through a phase where I was creating lots of digital art, which is all through Photoshop, Illustrator, those software, which is great, and it looks really crisp and clean, and you can apply it to everything. But more recently, I've gone back to traditional, just paint, watercolor, pencil, because it's really organic and it's really natural, and it just feels really good to create something like that. And if you make a mistake, you have to just work with it. So you can't just, undo and delete the file. You just have to just work with it. So I've gone back to more traditional, organic type of mediums. Okay. So that trip in Spain was just amazing, and just meeting with him and seeing his perception of art and what it means for him as well. And and it just kept encouraging me to do more and more exhibitions. So from there, I actually started to do exhibitions here, where I'm encouraging other artists and photographers to display their work. Cool. So the one I did last year, we had 7 artists contribute. One of them was David, so he sent his work over from Spain. And another one is an artist from Brazil. His name's Luciano. He's got a tattoo studio in Brazil. And we just kind of interacted through Instagram a long time ago. Yeah. He sent his work over, and I was representing him. And he sold some of his artwork at my exhibition. And we also had photographers and everything. And it was a huge turnout. I think we had about 120 artworks up. Wow. And this place was huge. It was a rowing club, so it was a big hall, and we just covered all the walls with artworks, and I did that. So I created that
That's what
myself.
I'm saying. Like, that's what I think about. And you were so maybe apprehensive about doing it yourself. You were looking for guidance, and he said, make your own, sell your own, put your artwork up, see what happens, see how people react. Yeah. You sell 3 out of 5, you go meet him, now you're doing your own exhibition, you're helping other people again from all over the world, right? It's just, and they're selling their artwork, and then you look around and you're like, just like you said, I did that. Like, I created this and I helped these people, and I think it's so cool because you took the risk. Because it's hard. I mean, I'm no artist and I've never put work out, but I've put the podcast out, which is my work, and it can be tough. It's even tough now to put out a piece of what you've created for other people to judge. I mean, plain and simple, to see, are they going to buy it? Or are they not going to buy it? Are people going to listen to the podcast? Or are they going to not listen to the podcast? Are they going to disagree? Or are they going to not like it? Or it's tough. It's very exposing. And to do that is very, very cool to hear that you did go through with it and then you didn't stop there. But it is inspiring when you actually see people, 3 out of 5 sold. When you see people like your artwork and buy your artwork, they like it so much that they buy it. That just absolutely has got to light a flame and be like, wow, let's keep it rolling. Let's keep it going, And a lot of times I don't get feedback for the podcast, and that's fine. I enjoy doing it, but I know when I get like that one little like, hey, this meant a lot to me, or what you wrote under this picture, this was awesome. This really struck a note with me. That just, boom, it lights a fire, like I said, and I'm just so ready to I want to do better, and I want to inspire more people. And when you're on there, you got passion, and you're so excited about people buying your artwork. And then you help other people, and then they sell other artwork, and then it just keeps on going, keeps on snowballing.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, for me as well, I don't just do it for that. I do it because I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
And I love the characters that I've created. So you'd see my style, it's very similar. Like my style, people can pick it. A lot of people have said, oh, I can tell that's your drawing because of the line work and how you hold the brush and all that. So for me, first of all, it's relaxing because I have a very stressful job. So it's very relaxing when I come home and I just paint and draw. But then also creating something and just putting it out there, I love that. And it's not even about, I have to sell my work.
Yeah,
because
of course,
honestly, I don't even have an online store. I've been meaning to do it for a long time.
You
I'm
should
just
do
a
it.
bit lazy.
Yeah. You should do it.
I should do it. But I get a lot of commissions, and I get a lot of people coming up to me and asking me to create artwork for them. So that keeps me going. But also the main thing is I really enjoy it and I really love it, and I would never, ever stop drawing, painting.
Yeah.
Like that's just
I love that. I say the same thing about the podcast. Absolutely, 100%. And it is really good being able to sell your artwork, but I completely agree. I love meeting people like yourself, being inspired by you. I'm truly inspired. I hope that I can inspire other people. And I love talking about the cultures and the stories. For the 10th time, I'm blown away by your story. I can't wait to go tell my wife about it as soon as we hang up here, as I think it's so incredible. And it's just about doing what you love. And I know the second our Skype connection connected tonight, we were off to the races talking even before we were recording, because we were talking about, you're like, asking each other how our days were. And then we connected on, wow, we both, we're both working on our passion projects after work. Like, we both have day jobs. I have a day job. You have a day job. They're both very stressful, but we come home and it relaxes you. And this conversation relaxes me, and I love doing it. And the artwork, you love doing it. If you're listening, this is the podcast right here. Like, make time for things that make you feel better. Make time for things that relieve the stress in your body and just make you happy. Do what makes you happy. Like, make time for it. Don't say, I don't have the time, or, God only knows if you were like, I don't have the time to go draw, or I was like, I don't have the time to record a podcast or edit a photo. Usually I don't have the time. There's other things to do. There's bills to be paid, but you make the time and you go, and it turns out for the better. And I think it makes you a better, happier person to be able to do what makes you happy and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, right? So for you to say you don't have the time, or someone else to say that, it's actually your priorities. You need to prioritize what it is that you want to focus on. And the way I see the day job. Like, I love my job. It's really cool. I actually work for Cadbury, which is a chocolate brand.
Oh, man.
So I'm in marketing for a chocolate brand. It sells itself, but anyway.
Yeah, seriously.
Really good. It's stressful, but it's a really cool job, and I get to do really creative things at work with displays and in-store installations and things like that. So it's really cool. However, I see it as, that's almost like the foundation. So that's the job that keeps me going, and it pays the bills and everything, but I also do enjoy it, besides the stress, but I do enjoy it. And then everything else outside of that is what I'm working on so I can create my dream life, right? So it's with the art, with the travels. I'm actually working on a book at the moment. So I am writing about my story, but how art inspired it.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Pretty much what we spoke about. But I have had a chapter published before.
Oh,
I got to show you this.
Interesting.
So I don't know if you've heard of Jennifer Nicole Lee.
I personally haven't, no.
She's like a fitness guru in the States.
What's the name of that book? Just for people that are listening.
Yes, so it's called When You're Stuck in a Rut and Need a Motivational Kick in the Butt. It's a collection of motivational, inspirational stories, some of them fitness related, others just anything. So my chapter is in here.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Yeah, chapter 8.
Chapter 8, and it's called Childhood Memories. And it's just a little snapshot of pretty much the story I told you before.
Sure.
And the fact that she chose my story just encouraged me to write my own.
Sure. So how did she hear about your story, though? Through an Instagram page or what?
We've been Instagram friends and I think Facebook friends for a while. So I've always liked her workout programs and all that kind of stuff. She's awesome. You need to check her out, Jennifer Nicole Lee.
Well, you let her know. Tell her.
So she put a post up, I think it was last year, saying, I'm working on my next book and I'm looking for stories that are inspirational, motivational, that I can include in the book. And only a few are selected. And these are the rules and this is how many words and all those kind of details. So I hit her up and I said, yep, I would love to contribute. Yeah. And I wrote my story and I sent it to her. And I know there were a lot of people that submitted their stories. Sure. And, she contacted me and said she chose my story to be published in her book. Huh. And it was so encouraging. I never thought, I just kind of did it and then just
Isn't that funny how it works, though? Yeah, you don't think things are going to escalate from you taking action sometimes. That's a perfect example of that. Yeah, I think we always maybe underestimate ourselves, right?
Yes.
And you went out there and you wrote it, and again, very exposing of yourself. And you shared your story to her, and she loved it, and she published it. Incredible.
Yeah, so that was very encouraging for me as well. So now I'm working on my own book, and I've only gotten through the first half of the first chapter, but it's very detailed. So it talks about my mum's story and where she's come from, because that's
very cool,
much more incredible than my story. And
well, don't sell yourself short.
It really is. Like, she was one of 13 children, and just grew up in poverty and everything. So it was just very intense. Yeah. And then kind of leads into my story, and then it goes into how art played a big part in my life, and just the contrast of me colouring and drawing these beautiful coloured pictures, and then you've got the backdrop of desert and war and poverty and things. So it's me trying to be creative in my words and in writing to paint the picture with words about my story and about how art has become a huge part of it. And that's the first part of the journey. So I want to write that story, and then later on I'll work on something else. But that's what I'm working on at the moment, as well as everything else.
That's so cool. I'd love to eventually, for those listening, I have this magnificent book stack. I'm just kidding. It's only like 20 books here. I got another bookcase over here, but I'd love to eventually have a copy of your book in my library. I know I have a very good friend, Nate, from Conversation Number 8. Nate from 8, he's writing his book too. It's almost finished, almost published. It's in the final works of editing, and I'd love to have his book out here too. But I want to be able to support you as well. I love supporting him. You guys are doing amazing things, and I'd love to have a copy here and then continue to share it as well. It's I just see it doesn't stop. Like, you have your own incredible story, but I'd love to hear about your mother's story too, and the fact that you're writing in such detail. I'm already stupefied by hearing what you've told me tonight. So I'm very much already anticipating the release date of your book to be.
Thank you, thank you. And I feel like it's something that I want to contribute, and that's something that I want to leave behind, because
Yeah.
for us all through stories, so my mum will tell me the story or my grandmother will tell me a story, but nothing's ever actually in writing or captured.
Yeah.
So for me to write
Be able to capture
a book,
that, yeah.
it's like something that's, something I can leave here. But also I have a vision of creating either an animation or a film based on the story. So there's this stage, but then there's more and more and more, because
I love that, yeah.
Why not? So
Absolutely.
I think everything will make sense, everything will fall into place, but I follow my heart a lot. I just follow my heart, and something says to me that I have a purpose and I need to share my story and I need to do something about it. No one's going to just come along and say, hey, here's your dream on a silver platter. You have to do it for yourself. So
100%.
Yeah, that's why I just keep going.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love that you don't only have one goal. I love goal setting, and I love having things that are so incredible to get after, to pursue. But the fact that you have this one goal, and then you have the secondary and tertiary, and you have all these things lined up already that stem off the other, it's incredible. It goes completely towards to not, I was telling you, don't sell yourself short. Don't sell yourself short. You are capable of so much more. You got through everything you got through with your family. Whoever's listening, you're listening to this, so you're here. Like, you've made it to now. You're still here. You're still going to be here. If you've made it this far, you can do so much more. You're capable of so much more, and don't sell yourself short, and pursue what you really love, and you're doing that, and you're not stopping with the book. The book's incredible, and it's not to take away from the book. The book is amazing, and it's a great idea, and I cannot wait to read it. But you're not stopping with the book, and then you're going to encapsulate your love for illustrations, and then maybe starts with a book about you being a kid, but then the kid eventually will be able to watch or read this illustration or this movie about this, and that to me that's completely going full circle. It's great.
Thank you. I mean, like I said, it's something that I'm super excited about. I'm just so excited about. That's how I feel like I'm giving back. So by sharing my story, but then eventually even fast forward even more into the future, I want to give back even more. Like, I want to encourage people to help others, and I want to get out there and help people that are less fortunate, and build schools and, build shelters and things. So I do a lot of volunteering as well.
Sure.
But sometimes I don't actually physically have much time. So what I've done in the past year, is actually contribute artwork. So I would create artwork so there's a charity called Food Bank here in Australia, and they package up food and help people that can't afford, weekly meals and things. And it's not necessarily people that are homeless. It's actually just families that can't afford too much to spend on groceries and such. So what I would contribute to those charities is, obviously I'll donate food, but also artwork for they will do certificates for long-serving volunteers, and they'll do gift cards, and they'll do little artworks that they will give to their senior people and all of that kind of stuff. So that's how I would contribute or volunteer my time, is by creating artwork. That's
and a really good idea.
Also I created a series of hand-painted cards, greeting cards, that I sold for, I think it was $5 each, and then 100% of those proceeds went back into Food Bank. So yes, sometimes we can be super, super busy and we don't have the time. We'd like to volunteer, but we don't have the time. But there are other ways of doing it. Absolutely. Yes, you can donate money, you can donate food, but also, what is your skill that you can actually use?
That's a very good point.
Give back. So I think you got to think a bit more creatively around that. So it's not just your traditional volunteering and let's get out there and do this. So anything's possible. You have to be a bit creative with how you approach it.
Well, I think your life is all about creativity. You are an artist. Your imagination runs rampant, and you do very well at capturing that. And you also do very well about thinking about outside the box and being able to contribute as you have there. I would not have thought about that, and I think it's very neat. Especially, time is tough. We don't have a lot of it. We're so busy. To be able to capture that, to be able to think and contribute that way and provide the skill that you're already doing that you love, that's equally amazing. And it's so great to hear that you're able to share like that as well.
Yeah. And look, the other thing, I guess one thing I have, I'd say sacrificed, but it's really not a big thing. I don't watch TV. I don't come home and watch TV. I don't watch TV. There is one TV show I do like to watch, and I just stream that. And Empire, we're up to season 5. One with the music and all that. So I love that show. But I don't watch TV. I don't come home and just sit on the couch and just watch TV for hours. And then, maybe I should do some work. I come home, I'll make dinner, I'll go for a walk, and then I'll get stuck into my passion projects, which is, one night I'll do work on a chapter, one night I'll study Italian because I still go to Italian school. And then other times, okay, let's do some art. Sometimes I'm in bed sketching because I don't have much time, I'm tired. But even if I can do 10 minutes of sketching, I'll feel happy and then go to sleep.
Yeah, you absolutely have to do what you've just described. And I do the same thing. I mean, for the longest time, I was just, I'd be so tired in bed. I couldn't edit because I was editing sloppily the more tired I got. But I was just falling asleep in bed, just emailing and direct messaging, message after message after message. I mean, I've said it before, but I've sent hundreds and hundreds of, requests out because it was just so difficult. But whatever time I had, I used it. So you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah, and I know for me personally, like during the week, obviously, like I work a 5-day work week, but so I come home, of course I make time to spend with my wife. But I know, like, I have my TV shows as well, and, we'll watch them on the weekend or, when we have time for it, because we're not working for 48 hours on the weekend, so I can still get ample time in to work on my passion projects, and then, of course, I love to live my life as well and spend time with her and, watch our favorite TV shows that we like. But during the week, I am very strict about, I work. I was telling you, I'm fortunate enough to live close enough to work that I come home and I edit at lunch. I eat my lunch, I scarf it down, and I edit for 55 minutes, and then I go back to work, and then I come home and go to the gym, and then I come back from the gym, and I go straight into editing, whatever, if it's photos, or if I go into editing video or recording a conversation like we're having right now, and then I go to bed, or, I spend time with my wife and then go to bed. But I'm not, I would much rather sacrifice the TV or the whatever it is and to do something like this right here, productive. And it's not even just about being productive. It's about doing something that I enjoy or that you enjoy or that you're passionate about. And you said yourself, and I can say the same thing for myself, that I want this to not be my after hours project. Mm-hmm. I work very hard on this so that one day it will in turn be my day job. So I always have that in my mind, and I can see quite plainly that that's what one of the many things that drives you as well. So I just get so guilty. Like if I were to come home and watch TV, I'd be like, "What are you doing? You're vegetating on the couch. Go do something productive." So I'll never put myself in that position during the week, at least. But I do know to appreciate it on the weekend. And there are some things, go hiking or whatever it is you enjoy as well. You need to enjoy your life too.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, right? I think if it's a passion project and it's something that you're really, really focused on and passionate about, there can be times where you think, no, I just need a bit of a break from that, but you'll always go back to it. For me, I never leave it too long before one drawing and another, between one drawing and another. Really, so you always go back to it. It's a part of you. So with you and your podcast that you're doing and these conversations, just keep going, and you never know where it's going to take you. But you're going to meet people. You've met a lot of people already and spoken with a lot of people, and it teaches you something. It's Absolutely. Not about who's going to listen to it, what are people going to think. Just think about what you're getting out of it and how it makes you feel and how it makes the other person feel. Because like right now, for me to share my story and kind of relay that, it's really, I'm getting even more inspired because I thought, okay, yes, this is why I'm doing,
Yeah.
which is great.
No, I'm glad to be able to contribute. Yeah, absolutely. You, without a doubt, 100% have to do it for yourself as well. And there's there's nothing wrong with that. You absolutely have to take care of you before you can take care of other people.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So you got to keep doing what you're doing because I love it. I'm gonna listen more.
Thank you so much, and yeah, I always look forward to. It happened so quickly. Actually, I had just found your page last week, and then always I have a very strict schedule about when I record, but this is a non-recording night, and we made time to record tonight because of our 15-hour difference, you being in the future. So I knew I had to make it, and I couldn't be more excited and more inspired by your story, and I'm so happy and like I said, so excited to share it. So Lena, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's truly inspirational, and I look forward to watch you and see the many, many more artworks that you will create and how you continue to inspire others, and the shows you'll have and the books you'll write and the illustrations for the children and the movies, potentially everything. Just you as well. Keep on going. Anybody that's listening, keep on going. That's what you have to just. Some days will be tough. I don't always want to come home and edit. I'm sure there's some days you don't always want to do what you're doing, but you realize that some days you have to do it anyway because you have to think back to why you're doing it. And the why keeps me going. What I want in the future requires this now. So suck it up. Suck it up. You'll never regret doing the work that you're doing now later. Do your future self a favor by putting in the work now. And that's exactly what you're doing. Lena, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was an amazing conversation.
Absolutely. That hour, more than an hour, absolutely whizzed by. It zoomed by. I was thoroughly intrigued, and I look forward to going back and editing and listening to this very thoroughly. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great, I would say great night, but have a great day. I'll see you in the future tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right. See ya.
See you.